My name is Margaret, and I am 78 years old. 10 years ago, I stood in front of my son's house, clutching a plastic bag with just $30 inside, my whole body trembling. I had been kicked out by the very children I carried for 9 months, raised with my own hands, and loved with every breath in me. That moment burned into my soul, because I realized that sometimes the deepest scars don't come from strangers. They come from the ones who share your blood. But life has a way of turning things around. Today, as I stood at the gates of my brand new mansion, I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw my son standing there, his head bent, his voice shaking as he asked, "Mom, can I move in with you?" My heart froze, because memories of the past came rushing back, flooding me with pain, betrayal, and something I wasn't ready to admit out loud. I stared at him, trying to read his face, trying to understand what desperation could have driven him to stand in front of me like that. His hair was grayer now, his skin more tired, and his shoulders hunched as if the weight of the world had finally broken him down. 10 years ago, he had looked at me with cold eyes and told me I was a burden. 10 years ago, he had shut the door behind me and thrown my suitcase on the curb. Now, he stood begging for a place under my roof. But before I gave him an answer, I remembered everything that had happened. The cold nights, the humiliation, the tears I cried when no one cared. I could feel my chest tightening. Was I ready to forgive, or would I remind him of the day he chose to throw his own mother away like trash? You see, back then I wasn't the woman I am today. Back then, I had nothing but the $30 they shoved into my palm, as though it was a favor to me. I was broken, and I didn't know where to go. My daughter, who was standing next to her brother when they kicked me out, didn't even look me in the eye. I had raised them both alone after their father died, working 2 jobs to put food on the table. I missed meals so they could eat. I wore torn shoes so they could have school uniforms. I prayed every night that they would become better people than me. But when the time came, they treated me like I was the problem. Like I was just an old woman standing in the way of their comfort. That night, I wandered the streets, shivering in the cold, wondering if I should knock on a church door or sleep on the sidewalk. I thought about ending it all right there, because what is life if your own children cast you out? But deep inside, something in me refused to give up. I told myself, Margaret, if God woke you up today, then He still has a plan for you. I clung to that thought like it was a lifeline, even when tears blurred my vision and hunger tore at my stomach. But what could I do with just $30? Where could I go when no one wanted me? I ended up in a small shelter on the edge of town. The woman there looked at me with pity when I told her my story, but she gave me a bed and a bowl of soup. That soup tasted like heaven because it was the first warm thing I had eaten in days. That night, as I lay on a thin mattress with strangers coughing in the dark, I swore to myself that I would never be this helpless again. I didn't know how, but I promised that one day my children would look at me differently. One day, I would show them that the woman they called weak had more strength than they could ever imagine. The road from that night to standing in front of my mansion was long, painful, and full of battles I never thought I'd survive. I worked jobs no one else wanted, cleaning offices late into the night, scrubbing floors until my knees ached. I saved every dollar like it was gold. I made friends in unexpected places, people who saw value in me when my own blood didn't. And somewhere along the way, an opportunity came that changed everything. But I'll never forget the nights when I had to choose between buying food or buying medicine, when the only thing that kept me going was my faith that tomorrow could be better. And now here I was, face to face with my son again after 10 years. His eyes searched mine, maybe hoping for mercy, maybe hoping I had forgotten. But I hadn't forgotten. Not the sting of rejection, not the way my heart shattered when I realized my children didn't love me the way I loved them. The mansion behind me was proof of my survival, proof of my resilience. But it also became the stage for the biggest question of my life. What do you do when the people who betrayed you come crawling back, desperate for the very comfort they once denied you? I opened my mouth to answer him, but just then, my daughter's car pulled up behind him. She stepped out, her eyes red as if she had been crying. "Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling, "we need to talk." And in that moment, I realized the past wasn't finished with me. It had come knocking at my door again, demanding answers, demanding choices I wasn't sure I was ready to make. To be continued. If you want to know what happens next, how I went from being a mother abandoned with just $30 to a woman with a mansion of her own, and how I faced the children who once threw me away, stay with me for Chapter 2. This is not just my story, but a lesson for every silent grandmother out there. Never give up, because your story isn't over yet. Please like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of my journey. My daughter stood by her car, frozen as if the weight of her own choices had finally caught up with her. I had not seen her in almost a decade, yet her face was the same, except for the lines of regret that now marked her forehead. Her once sharp eyes were now swollen and glassy. I looked at her and remembered the last time she spoke to me. She had folded her arms and said, "Mom, you're just making life harder for us. You'll be fine with a little money." Then she had turned her back on me, letting her brother shove me out into the night. Now here she was, standing on the driveway of my mansion, trembling like a child who knew she had done something unforgivable. Why was she here? And what did she want from me? She took a few hesitant steps forward. My son moved aside, his face filled with guilt, as if the two of them had planned this visit together. But their timing felt like a storm crashing back into my life when I had just found peace. I didn't speak immediately. I wanted them to feel the silence, to let the weight of all those years press against their chests. The silence was heavier than any word I could utter. Finally, my daughter whispered again, "Mom, please, we need to talk." My voice was calm, but my heart was raging inside me.
About what?
I asked, narrowing my eyes. About how you left me with $30 and called me a burden? Or about how you locked your own mother out like a stranger? Her lips trembled. For a moment, she couldn't speak. I could see the shame building in her, but shame wasn't enough to erase what had been done. My son rubbed the back of his neck nervously, as though waiting for her to explain. Then, finally, she said it. "We lost everything." My body stiffened. The words pierced me, but not in the way they expected. Part of me wanted to laugh bitterly, because wasn't that what life does? It takes everything from those who mock the struggles of others. Yet another part of me felt a strange ache. These were my children, after all, no matter what they had done. But before I could respond, memories of the past rushed back again, reminding me of the day they had chosen to destroy me. 10 years earlier, after my husband passed, I thought my children would comfort me. Instead, I became a guest in my own house. They moved me from room to room, claiming they needed space for their own families, until one day they stood together and said it was time for me to live on my own. They didn't mean in another house. They didn't mean with care and dignity. They meant the streets. That night, I cried so hard my chest hurt. I prayed to God for strength, asking why the children I raised with love had turned into strangers who despised me. My daughter had even said, "Don't guilt us, Mom. You had your time." Those words stayed etched in me, even as I walked into the unknown with just $30. So when she stood in front of me now, begging for a chance to talk, it was impossible not to remember the sting of that betrayal. She took another step closer and said, "Mom, please. We made a mistake. We were wrong. We were greedy, selfish, blind, everything you always warned us about. And now we need you." My son shifted uneasily, clearly ashamed, but I could see in his eyes that this visit wasn't just about guilt. It was about survival. Something had happened to them, something bad. And suddenly, I felt a sharp fear. Did they come here for forgiveness, or did they come here for the mansion? I looked back at the massive iron gates behind me. This house wasn't just brick and stone. It was my triumph, my proof that no matter how far someone tries to push you down, you can rise higher. The thought of them walking through those gates, after throwing me away like garbage, made my blood boil. But still, my daughter's face haunted me. She had tears rolling down her cheeks, real tears, the kind I hadn't seen on her face since she was a little girl with a scraped knee. She sobbed, "Mom, we lost the house, the cars, everything. Please let us in. We have nowhere to go." My knees weakened slightly as I tried to process her words. The irony was too sharp. 10 years ago, I had nowhere to go. 10 years ago, I stood outside with tears in my eyes, begging them to at least let me stay one more night. They had slammed the door. Now here they were, begging me in the same way I once begged them. Was this karma, or was it God showing me something? I didn't know what answer I would give, but my heart pounded in my chest. My mansion was built on pain, struggle, and victory. Would I open its doors to those who caused the very pain that led me here? As I hesitated, my son suddenly fell to his knees. The sight shocked me. My proud, arrogant son, who once sneered at me and called me useless, was now kneeling on my driveway, his hands pressed together like a man in prayer. His voice cracked as he said, "Mom, I'm begging you. Please forgive us. Please don't turn us away like we did to you." The words hit me like lightning. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I saw the same driveway where, in another life, they had pushed me out. Now the tables had turned completely. But forgiveness was not something I could hand out like candy. Forgiveness is heavy. It costs something. It requires healing that I hadn't fully found yet. My mansion was proof I had rebuilt my life, but my scars still throbbed. I stood there, looking at my children crumbling in front of me, when a chilling thought entered my mind. If I let them in, would they destroy me again? Or, if I turned them away, would I destroy myself? I opened my mouth, ready to give my answer. But just then, another car pulled into the driveway. My heart skipped. I wasn't expecting anyone. And when the door opened, my breath caught in my throat. The person who stepped out was the last person I ever thought I would see again. To be continued. If you want to know who stepped out of that car and why their presence could change everything about the story, don't miss Chapter 3. Trust me, this is where things truly begin to unravel. Please like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of my journey. When the car door opened, I froze. For a moment, I thought my eyes were deceiving me. The man who stepped out was Robert, my late husband's younger brother. I hadn't seen him in nearly 20 years, not since the bitter argument over my husband's inheritance. My heart pounded as I watched him close the car door and walk toward us, his presence bringing with it the memory of betrayal from another time. Why was he here now, on this day, when my children were already standing at my gates in shame? Robert had once been like a brother to me. After my husband's death, I thought he would step in to help guide my children. Instead, he had whispered lies into their ears, filling their minds with promises of money and comfort if only they would follow his advice. I suspected then that he had played a role in their cruelty toward me, convincing them I was a burden standing in the way of their future. Now, seeing him after so many years, with a smug look in his eye, I knew my suspicions had been right all along. He wasn't here to reconcile. He was here to claim something. But what? My son and daughter turned pale the moment they saw him. My daughter wiped her tears quickly and stepped back, as though she had been caught in a lie. My son, still kneeling, stood up abruptly, his face hardening. "What are you doing here?" he spat, his voice filled with a mixture of fear and anger. Robert didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled, that same cruel smile I remembered from years ago. "I came," he said slowly, "because I hear times have changed. And it looks like I was right." His eyes slid to me, his gaze sharp and heavy. "Margaret, you did well for yourself. Very well. And now, it's time to talk about family business." Those words made my stomach twist. Family business. That phrase from his lips always meant trouble. He had once swindled half of my husband's savings, claiming it was an investment. He had tried to manipulate my children against me. And now, standing in front of my mansion, he acted as though this house, my hard-earned victory, was somehow his to discuss. I clenched my fists, steadying myself. I would not let him walk in and take what I had built. Not now, not ever. But his timing was dangerous. My children were vulnerable, desperate, and guilty. Would they side with me this time? Or would they once again let Robert's poison drip into their ears? Robert stepped closer, his polished shoes crunching on the gravel. "I've spoken to your children," he said coldly. "They told me everything. They lost their home. They lost their money. And now you stand here with a mansion. But don't forget, Margaret, that blood ties run deep. This house should not only belong to you. We are family, and family shares." The nerve in his words burned through me. Family? He spoke of family when he had pushed me into loneliness years ago, when he had fed greed into the hearts of my children, when he had watched me suffer with nothing but $30 to my name. I saw my daughter glance nervously at him, as though his presence gave her a strange sense of protection. My son, however, shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tightening. "Uncle Robert," he muttered, "this isn't your place." Robert laughed, a low, mocking sound. "Isn't it? You think you're better than me now? Look at you, homeless, begging at your mother's door. If it wasn't for me, you'd still be clinging to scraps. Don't forget who showed you how the world works." His words sliced through the air like knives. My son's face reddened with anger, but I could see the conflict in his eyes. Robert still had power over him. I stepped forward, my voice steady but sharp. "This mansion is mine. Every brick, every window, every gate was built from the sweat of my labor. You had no hand in it, Robert. And neither did my children. Don't you dare stand here and talk about sharing. I owe you nothing." For a second, silence filled the air, heavy and suffocating. My daughter's shoulders shook, my son's fists clenched, and Robert's smirk only widened. "We'll see about that," he said softly, almost like a threat. My mind raced back to the beginning of my journey, the time after they abandoned me. It had been Robert's words echoing in my head then too. He had told my children that old people were just weights around their necks. He had convinced them that their future required cutting me off. I remembered the night I left, how his shadow lingered in the background as my children pushed me away. And now, here he was again, trying to reap from what he had never sown. The pain from the past burned into the present, making it hard to breathe. But in that moment, I realized something. Robert's return was not an accident. He had come back because he thought I was still weak, still the woman who had begged at the curb with $30. He didn't know that I had grown into someone he could no longer control. My mansion was proof, but now I had to prove it with my voice, with my choices. This was the true test of everything I had built. Would I let him and my children twist their way back into my life? Or would I stand firm and protect what I had created with my own two hands? I opened my mouth to speak, but then Robert did something I never expected. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. With a smug grin, he waved it in the air. "Before your husband died," he said, "he left certain documents in my care. Documents that might change everything about what you think you own." My body went cold. Documents? What was he talking about? When Robert pulled out that folded piece of paper, my hands went cold. He dangled it in front of me like a weapon, his eyes glittering with that cruel satisfaction I remembered too well. "Before your husband died," he repeated slowly, "he gave me this. And if you think this mansion, this land, this wealth is all yours, you may be in for a surprise." His voice was steady, almost taunting, like a man who had been waiting years for this moment. My knees trembled, but I locked my jaw and stared at him without blinking. I would not let him see fear in my eyes. My sons had jerked toward Robert, his brows furrowed in confusion. "What papers?" he demanded. My daughter, still wringing her hands, whispered, "Uncle Robert, what are you talking about?" Robert simply shook his head and smirked. "You children don't know half of what your mother hides. But don't worry. I'll make sure you get what's rightfully yours." His words twisted the knife in my chest. For years, I had carried the burden of my late husband's estate, and now Robert wanted to paint me as the thief. I took a step closer to him, my voice calm but sharp enough to cut glass. "Robert, you've been a snake since the day I met you. You think you can wave a paper in my face and shake me? Show it then. Show me what you think you have." Inside, my heart was racing. What if there really was something? What if my husband had left something in Robert's hands, and I had been blind to it all these years. My mind spiraled with fear, but I held my ground, refusing to back away. Slowly, Robert unfolded the paper with deliberate movements, dragging out every second as though it was a performance. My children leaned closer, their faces etched with confusion and desperation. He cleared his throat and read aloud. In the event of my passing, I entrust my brother Robert with temporary authority to oversee my assets until such a time my children come of age or my wife Margaret demonstrates sufficient responsibility in managing financial matters. My body stiffened. The words hit me like a slap. Temporary authority. Oversight. Responsibility. My husband had written those words during a time of grief and illness, when his mind wasn't steady, when he was terrified of leaving us unprotected. But Robert's lips curled with triumph, as though the paper was a death sentence against me. My children gasped, their eyes widening with a dangerous mix of shock and resentment. I could almost see their thoughts swirling. Had I stolen what was meant to be theirs? I clenched my fists. That paper, I said firmly, expired the moment you twisted it to your advantage. My husband trusted you to help, not to destroy. You were supposed to guide, not to steal. And for years, you disappeared, leaving me to clean offices, scrub floors, and fight for survival with only $30. You abandoned your duty. That paper means nothing now. My voice echoed against the driveway walls, and for a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. But Robert only laughed. It was a cruel, bitter sound that made my stomach turn. You can spin your stories, Margaret, but at the end of the day, it's your word against mine. And you know how the law works. Documents speak louder than tears. I can go to court with this, and let's see if your precious mansion still belongs to you by the end of it. His eyes flicked toward my children, who were hanging on every word. And you too. You might finally get the inheritance you deserve. My son looked torn. He ran his hands through his hair, pacing. Mom, is this true? Did Dad really mean for Uncle Robert to control everything? Did you keep this from us? His voice cracked with the weight of suspicion. My heart shattered. I kept nothing from you. I cried. I protected what little we had when Robert abandoned us. Every brick of this house was built by me. By my hands, my sweat, my pain. Don't you dare think I owe any of you a piece of it. But even as I said those words, I could see doubt planting itself in their minds. Robert had always been skilled at manipulation. He knew how to twist the truth until it cut like a knife. And now, with a single sheet of paper, he was threatening to tear apart the life I had fought so hard to build. I glanced back at the mansion behind me, my sanctuary, my proof that I had survived. The thought of losing it made my chest ache. Not because of the walls or the luxury, but because of what it symbolized. My resilience, my victory over the cruelty I endured. I couldn't let him take that from me. Not after everything. Robert folded the paper again, sliding it neatly back into his coat pocket. You have a choice, Margaret, he said softly, his smile chilling. You can let us in, me, your son, your daughter, and share what you've built. Or I take this paper to court and make sure you're dragged through hell until you lose everything. Decide quickly. You're not as young as you used to be. Stress like this can break a woman your age. His words sent a shiver down my spine. I could feel my children's eyes on me, waiting, calculating, desperate. My son finally whispered, Mom, maybe it's best if we all just move in together. As a family. My daughter nodded weakly, clutching her arms as though she was cold. They were falling right back under Robert's spell, the same spell that once convinced them to throw me out with $30. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just about forgiveness or survival anymore. This was war. Robert wanted control. My children wanted comfort. And I wanted my dignity. Someone was going to lose. And I had no intention of letting it be me. But before I could answer, my phone rang. The sound sliced through the tension like a blade. I pulled it from my pocket, my hands trembling. The caller ID made my breath catch in my throat. It was my lawyer. The sound of my phone ringing felt almost unnatural in that tense moment, cutting through Robert's smug voice and my children's pleading eyes. My hand shook as I brought it closer, the name flashing on the screen, Mr. Daniels, my lawyer. My heart thudded against my ribs. Why was he calling now, right in the middle of the storm? I pressed the phone to my ear, my voice low, almost whispering, "Hello." My children leaned forward, trying to catch every word, and Robert's smirk never wavered. He knew the call could make or break his plan. "Margaret," Mr. Daniels' firm voice came through, steady and calm as always. "I've just finished reviewing the final filings for your estate. But more importantly, I found something about Robert." My eyes widened, and my free hand clutched the gate for balance. I glanced at Robert, who was watching me like a hawk, and turned slightly so he couldn't read my expression. "What did you find?" I whispered. Mr. Daniels lowered his voice. "That document Robert has been waving around, it's expired. Not only that, but I have proof that he forged an addendum years ago to make it look like he still had authority. He committed fraud, Margaret. If he tries to use it in court, he's finished." The blood drained from my face.
Fraud.
My suspicion had been right all along. Robert wasn't just a snake. He was a criminal who had been using lies to control my children and threaten me. My hands trembled, not from fear this time, but from the weight of knowing I finally had the power to end his manipulation once and for all. But if I revealed this too soon, if I let him know I already had the truth in my hands, would he strike back harder? I turned my body away from them, gripping the phone tighter. "Mr. Daniels, are you absolutely certain?"
He didn't hesitate.
100%. I'll meet you tomorrow morning with the full documents. For now, don't let him suspect you know. I hung up, my mind spinning. My son frowned. "What was that about? What did your lawyer say?" His voice was sharp, filled with suspicion. My daughter bit her lip nervously, glancing between me and Robert. Robert narrowed his eyes, trying to read me, his hands folded behind his back, as though he were a king waiting for a subject to answer. Every bone in my body screamed to expose him, to shout the truth so loud the walls of the mansion shook. But I swallowed it down. Timing was everything. "I'll deal with it," I said coolly, slipping the phone back into my pocket. My voice didn't crack, though my heart raced. "Whatever papers Robert has, I'll handle them." Robert's lips twitched into another smile, though I could see a flicker of doubt flash in his eyes. He stepped forward. "You're stalling, Margaret. You know the law is on my side. Don't make this harder on yourself. Let us in." The words, "let us in," cut deeper than he knew. 10 years ago, I had begged those same words at my children's doorstep. 10 years ago, they had slammed the door in my face. Now they were begging to come in, and Robert was trying to force his way in behind them. My son spoke again, his voice low and heavy with shame. "Mom, please. We have nowhere else. We've lost everything. We're not lying. The house is gone. The cars are gone. We can't even pay rent anymore. Just please." He looked at me with eyes that reminded me of the little boy I once held, the boy who clung to me when he was afraid of thunderstorms. For the briefest moment, my heart ached with the memory. But then I remembered the storm 10 years ago, when I was the one clinging to them for shelter, and they shoved me out instead. My chest tightened with rage and pain. I looked at both of them and said softly, "Now you know what it feels like." The silence that followed was suffocating. My daughter gasped, tears spilling down her face. "Mom, don't say that. We were young, stupid, blinded. Please, don't turn us away. We're your children." Robert seized on her words instantly.
Exactly.
"They are your blood. They deserve what you have. Don't forget that, Margaret. You can't rewrite bloodlines. This house, this wealth, it belongs to all of us." His voice dripped with poison. I spun around and pointed a trembling finger at him. "Don't you dare talk to me about blood, Robert. You poisoned mine. You filled my children's ears with lies, turned them against me, and then abandoned us when it suited you. You forfeited your right to call yourself family long ago." My voice cracked, but the fire in it silenced even my children for a moment. Still, I saw hesitation in their eyes. They were torn, standing on a thin rope between shame and desperation. Robert's presence was pulling them toward his side, toward greed. And I realized that my fight wasn't just against Robert, It was against the weakness in my children, the same weakness that once cast me out. I could not afford to falter now. I built this mansion with my hands, I said firmly, my voice rising. I cleaned floors until my bones ached. I lived off scraps to save every dollar. I clawed my way out of the pit you threw me into. And now, you stand at my gates asking for comfort?
No, not yet.
Their faces fell, a mixture of fear and disbelief. But I wasn't finished. I took a deep breath and added, tomorrow, we'll see the truth. All of it. And when it comes out, none of you will be able to hide from it. The shock in their eyes was unmistakable. Robert's smirk faltered for the first time, just a flicker, but I saw it. My son's jaw dropped, and my daughter's sobs grew louder. They didn't know what I meant, but they knew something was coming. I turned my back on them, my hand gripping the gate handle, ready to shut them out for the night. But then, just as I pushed the gate closed, I heard Robert's voice call out, low and threatening. If you think tomorrow will save you, Margaret, you're wrong. Tomorrow might be the day you lose everything. The gate clanged shut, and I leaned against it, my chest heaving. My lawyer had the truth. Robert had his lies. My children had their desperation. And tomorrow, everything would be laid bare. The night felt endless. After shutting the gate in their faces, I sat in the silence of my mansion, staring at the polished marble floors that once felt like victory, but now felt like a battlefield. Sleep would not come. My mind replayed Robert's smirk, my son's desperate eyes, my daughter's trembling voice. His words echoed in my chest like a curse. Tomorrow might be the day you lose everything. I sat upright in my chair until dawn, clutching my Bible with trembling hands, whispering prayers into the stillness of the night. Tomorrow held answers, but also dangers I wasn't sure I was ready to face. When morning finally came, I stood by the wide glass doors, watching the sun pour light over the driveway. My heart pounded when I saw Mr. Daniels' car roll through the gates. He stepped out, briefcase in hand, his face set with the calm determination I had come to trust. He adjusted his glasses, and the moment our eyes met, he gave a firm nod. Margaret, he said, his voice steady, it's time. Before we could even step inside, I heard the rumble of another car. My son's SUV came screeching into the driveway, my daughter's smaller sedan right behind. And of course, trailing them like a shadow of evil, Robert's black car glided in, as if he owned the road. They spilled out quickly, their faces tight with tension, their movements frantic. My son called out, Mom, please, we can settle this now. Don't make this ugly. My daughter added, we don't need lawyers. We're family. Her words cracked, but her eyes betrayed fear. Robert, however, walked with unshaken arrogance, his coat pressed, his grin sharp. Daniels, he said coolly, still running to clean up Margaret's mess, I see. You've wasted your career defending a woman who doesn't even deserve what she has. My fists clenched, but Mr. Daniels raised a hand slightly, as if to tell me to let him handle it. He placed his briefcase on the hood of his car, clicking it open. The metallic snap echoed, sending chills down my spine. Robert, Mr. Daniels said firmly, pulling out a stack of neatly bound documents, you've paraded around a piece of paper that expired decades ago. What you didn't count on was that we have the original filings from your brother's estate, signed, sealed, and notarized. You had temporary authority, yes. Temporary. That ended when Margaret proved she was capable of handling her affairs. And your little addendum? He held up another paper, his eyes narrowing behind his glasses.
Forgery.
Clear as day. The color drained from Robert's face, but only for a second. He recovered quickly, his smile returning like a mask. That's nonsense. No judge will believe an old widow over me. Mr. Daniels' lips twitched with the faintest hint of satisfaction. They won't need to believe Margaret. They'll believe the handwriting analysis, the forensic evidence, and the notarized copies in the county records. I've already filed a preliminary injunction against you. If you so much as breathe near her property again, you'll face charges. The air grew heavy, the silence deafening. My children stood frozen, their eyes darting between Robert and Mr. Daniels, torn between the man who had promised them power and the lawyer who held the truth. My son's face crumbled with confusion. "Uncle Robert, you said," his voice trailed off broken. My daughter whispered, "You lied to us?" Her words were almost inaudible, but they carried the sting of betrayal. Robert sneered, his eyes narrowing dangerously. "Do you think some lawyer's tricks can erase me? You think this is over? Margaret, you don't understand. Your children need me. They always will. And when the dust settles, you'll be alone again." His words pierced me deeper than I expected. He wasn't entirely wrong. My children had chosen him over me once. Could I really trust that they wouldn't again? I looked at my son and daughter, hoping, praying, that this was the moment they would finally open their eyes and see Robert for who he truly was. But instead of rushing to me, they hesitated. Their silence was worse than any slap. Robert smirked, sensing their weakness.
"See?
Even now, they don't know who to trust. You can hide behind lawyers, but in the end, they will choose me." For a moment, I felt my strength falter. What if Robert was right? What if the truth didn't matter, and my children's hearts were already poisoned beyond repair? I gripped the edge of Mr. Daniels' briefcase, steadying myself. "No," I said softly but firmly. "This ends today. You've stolen enough years from me. You won't steal another." My voice shook, but it carried a power I hadn't felt in years. Robert's grin faded just slightly, replaced by a flash of anger. His mask was cracking. Mr. Daniels closed the briefcase with a snap and turned to me. "Margaret, we need to take this to court immediately. If we file today, everything will be protected. He won't be able to touch your property." My children stiffened.
Court.
The word hit them hard. They hadn't expected this fight to reach that level. My son suddenly stepped forward, his voice rising. "Mom, don't do this. Don't drag us into court. We can work this out. Just let us stay here with you. We'll be a family again." His words stung because part of me longed for that, longed for my children to come back, for us to eat at the same table, to laugh together, to heal. But deep down, I knew what those words really meant. They wanted shelter, comfort, safety, not reconciliation. Robert folded his arms, watching me, his eyes dark and calculating. He knew my weakness. He knew my heart still ached for my children. He knew that was the lever he could pull to destroy me. And for a terrifying second, I didn't know what choice I would make. Then, just as I opened my mouth to speak, the sound of tires screeched behind us. Another car pulled into the driveway, fast and aggressive. The doors slammed open, and when I saw who stepped out, my stomach dropped. It was someone I never thought I'd see on this battlefield, someone whose presence could change everything. The screech of tires was so loud it made my heart jump into my throat. All eyes turned as the car spun into the driveway, dust flying up behind it. The engine cut, the doors swung open, and out stepped a woman I hadn't seen in years, Elaine. My sister. The sight of her made my knees weaken. We hadn't spoken in nearly 15 years, not since the bitter feud after my husband's funeral. She had accused me of hiding money, of keeping things that belonged to the family. I had accused her of siding with Robert. Our last words to each other had been poisoned with anger, and from that day forward, we lived like strangers. And now, here she was, standing in front of my mansion, her face lined with age, but her presence still sharp, commanding. "Margaret," she said, her voice carrying across the driveway, "we need to talk." The air grew heavier. My children's mouths dropped open in shock. Robert's smug grin twitched, faltering just slightly at her arrival. I could see the flicker of irritation in his eyes. Elaine had always been his match, smart, sharp, and unafraid to cut through his games. But why was she here now? Why did she choose this moment, when the past was already roaring back into my life? Elaine walked closer, her heels clicking against the stone. She glanced briefly at my children, then at Robert, before locking her eyes on me. "I heard about the mansion," she said bluntly. "I heard about Robert's lies. And I came because there's something you don't know, something your husband told me before he died." My breath caught. My husband. After all these years, his voice still haunted me in dreams. What could he have possibly told her that I didn't know myself? Robert's face darkened. Elaine, this doesn't concern you, he snapped, his voice losing its calm edge. Stay out of this. Elaine's lips curled into a bitter smile. Oh, it concerns me more than you think. I know about the paper you've been waving around, Robert. I know you forged it. I told my sister years ago, but she wouldn't listen because she trusted family too much. You've been stealing, lying, and poisoning her children against her for your own gain. And it ends today. The words hit me like a punch. My body shook as I looked at her, my sister who had once turned her back on me, now standing in defense of me. Tears stung my eyes, but I held them back, refusing to break in front of Robert. My children, however, looked like the ground had just opened beneath their feet. My son's voice cracked. Is this true? Did you really forge everything? His voice was full of disbelief, but there was fear in it too, fear that the truth was finally crashing down. Robert's mask slipped. For the first time since he arrived, his face twisted with anger. Don't listen to her, he barked. She's trying to confuse you, turn you against me.
She always hated me.
Margaret, don't let her worm her way back in. His voice was desperate now, the arrogance draining from him like water from a broken vase. But Elaine didn't flinch. She pulled something from her bag, a small stack of papers. She held them up. I kept copies, Margaret. Copies of everything Robert tried to change.
Proof.
And if you still don't believe me, your lawyer here can confirm it. He knows. Mr. Daniels stepped forward, nodding. She's telling the truth. I reviewed her documents this morning. They match perfectly with the county's files. Robert has no claim. None. The silence that followed was thunderous. My son's knees buckled slightly, as if the weight of his uncle's deception was too much. My daughter buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. And Robert looked like a cornered wolf, his eyes darting, his jaw tight, his fists clenching at his sides. For years, he had thrived on manipulation, on lies, on power. Now, piece by piece, his empire of deceit was crumbling. I took a deep breath, stepping forward. Robert, I said quietly but with steel in my voice, you destroyed my family. You turned my children against me. You left me to rot with $30 while you smiled in the shadows. And now, you stand on my driveway demanding my mansion? No more. Your reign ends here. But as soon as the words left my lips, Robert snapped. His face twisted with rage, and in a sudden, violent motion, he lunged forward, his hand diving into his coat. For one terrifying second, I thought he might pull out a weapon. My daughter screamed, my son froze, and Mr. Daniels shouted, "Stop." Elaine stepped in front of me instinctively, her arms spread as though to shield me. Robert's hand came out, clutching not a gun, but a small, black notebook. His eyes burned with fury. You think you've beaten me? He growled. You think papers and lawyers can stop me? This book has everything, every secret, every deal, every sin your precious husband kept hidden. And if I open it, Margaret, your whole world will come crashing down. My blood ran cold. A secret notebook? My husband's sins? What could Robert possibly mean? The small, black notebook in Robert's hand looked harmless, yet it felt like a ticking bomb. His knuckles whitened as he held it up, his eyes wild, his voice shaking with venom. This, he snarled, is the truth your husband never wanted you to know. Secrets about his money, his affairs, his debts. Do you really think he was the saint you believed him to be? Do you really think your mansion stands on clean ground? The words hit me like a slap. My heart stuttered, my breath caught in my throat. My husband, the man I had loved, the father of my children, the one whose death nearly destroyed me. What secrets could Robert possibly be talking about? My knees wobbled, and for a second I thought I might collapse. My son's face twisted with shock. Dad?
No.
Uncle Robert, you're lying. You always lie, he shouted, but his voice cracked with doubt. My daughter's sobs grew louder, her body trembling as she whispered, Mom, what if it's true? Elaine stepped forward, her voice sharp as a blade. "Don't you dare, Robert. Don't you dare drag my brother's memory through the mud just to cover your own crimes." But Robert laughed, a cold, guttural sound that echoed through the driveway. "Oh, Elaine, always so self-righteous. But you don't know half of it. This book contains names, transactions, secrets that would burn Margaret's precious reputation to the ground. She thinks she's sitting on victory, but she's sitting on ashes." I staggered backward, my hand gripping the iron gate for support. My mind raced with questions. Could it be possible? Could the man I trusted have left behind lies, debts, betrayals that I never uncovered? Or was this just another one of Robert's manipulations, another twisted trick to break me down? My heart screamed to hold on to faith, but my head was spinning with fear. Mr. Daniels raised his voice, calm but firm. "Robert, if that notebook is real, then hand it over to me. If it contains evidence, it belongs in the hands of the court, not in your pocket. If it's fake, then you're guilty of another fraud." Robert's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a grin. "Oh, it's real. And it's mine. And the court will never see it unless I decide they should. The question is, Margaret, do you really want your children to know what's inside? Do you want them to see the truth about their father?" My heart ached as I looked at my son and daughter. Their faces were pale, their eyes darting between me and Robert, fear clouding their expressions. For years, they had resented me, blamed me for not giving them more. What if Robert's notebook gave them another reason to hate me? What if it shattered the last fragile thread of love that still bound us together? Elaine stepped closer to me, placing a firm hand on my shoulder. "Don't listen to him," she whispered. "This is his game. He's bluffing. He wants to break you before the court sees the truth." But Robert heard her, and his laugh was cruel. "Bluffing? Let's see then." He flipped the notebook open, his fingers running over the yellowed pages. His voice rang out as he began to read. June 14th, payment from Margaret's account redirected to cover debts from gambling. July 3rd, agreement with private lender to sell half the land behind the farm. August 12th, unrecorded bank withdrawal. Names: Daniels, Elaine, Robert. Mr. Daniels' face went pale. Elaine gasped. My whole body shook violently, my mind screaming in disbelief. Gambling? Secret debts? Selling land?
No.
No, it couldn't be true. My husband had been flawed. Yes, but not like this. Not this level of betrayal. I felt my chest tighten, as though the air had been sucked from the world. My daughter covered her mouth, her sobs turning into hysterical cries. Dad did this? He lied to us. My son's fist slammed against the hood of Robert's car, his face red with rage. Shut up. Shut up. You're lying. But Robert didn't stop. He read more, his voice louder, feeding on our pain. October 22nd, met with Robert to discuss selling assets overseas. November 10th, argument with Margaret about disclosure. December 2nd, final instructions, Robert to hold authority until children mature. Margaret cannot handle finances. Signed. He slammed the book shut with a dramatic snap. Signed by your beloved husband. Tell me, Margaret, how does it feel to know he trusted me more than he trusted you? The words cut through me like glass. I staggered, my breath shallow, my hands shaking uncontrollably. For a moment, the ground beneath me felt like it would give way. All these years, I had carried his memory as my shield. All these years, I believed I was building on the foundation of his love and trust. Now Robert threatened to rip even that away from me. My children's eyes were wild with confusion and pain. Elaine's face was tight with fury, but even she looked shaken. Mr. Daniels grabbed the notebook, but Robert yanked it back, clutching it to his chest like a weapon. Margaret, Robert hissed, stepping closer. Your choices are simple. Let us in, share the wealth, or I let the whole world see what kind of man your husband really was. Your children will never look at you the same way again. The world will laugh at the old widow who thought she had won, only to find out she was living a lie. Tears burned in my eyes, but I held them back with every ounce of strength I had left. I lifted my chin, forcing my voice to steady. Even if every word in that book is true, I said softly, it doesn't erase the truth about you. You lied. You stole. You abandoned us. And I will never let you win. Robert's eyes darkened, his smile vanishing into a grimace. Then prepare yourself, he whispered, because this is only the beginning. Before anyone could react, Robert shoved the notebook into his coat, jumped into his car, and roared down the driveway, the tires screaming as he disappeared into the distance. The silence he left behind was deafening. My children collapsed against each other, sobbing. Elaine gripped my arm tightly, whispering, "We can't let him get away with this." Mr. Daniels rubbed his temples, his face grim. "Margaret, we need to talk. Because if even part of that notebook is real, everything changes." My heart pounded so hard it hurt. My mansion, my victory, my dignity, everything was now hanging by a thread. And for the first time, I wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring. The morning of the court hearing arrived like a storm that had been brewing for years. My hands trembled as I buttoned my simple blue dress, the same one I had worn to church countless Sundays. Today it wasn't about style. Today it was about strength. Elaine was already downstairs, pacing like a soldier preparing for battle. Mr. Daniels sat calmly at the dining table, papers neatly stacked in front of him, but I could see the tension in his jaw. My children were nowhere to be seen. They hadn't stayed in the mansion that night. They had chosen to sleep at a cheap motel in town, too ashamed or too afraid to face me after everything Robert revealed. As I stepped into the car with Elaine and Mr. Daniels, my heart pounded so hard I thought it might break my ribs. My mansion loomed behind me, a symbol of all I had built. But today it was also at risk. If Robert succeeded, I could lose everything: my home, my dignity, the proof of my survival. I closed my eyes and whispered a prayer. God, don't let me fall today. Don't let him win. When we arrived at the courthouse, the air outside was thick with whispers. People stared as we walked past, murmuring about the case, about the old widow with the mansion and the family tearing itself apart. My cheeks burned, but I held my head high. If Robert wanted to shame me, he would not see me bow. Inside the courtroom, the tension was suffocating. Robert sat at the opposite table, the black notebook resting in front of him like a loaded gun. His smug grin was back, his eyes flicking to me with silent mockery. My son sat beside him, pale and torn, while my daughter sat at the back of the courtroom, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't even look at me. The judge entered, his gavel striking. "This court is now in session." My chest tightened. Mr. Daniels rose, his voice calm, authoritative. "Your Honor, we are here to defend Mrs. Margaret against fraudulent claims by her late husband's brother, Robert. We will show proof that the document he presents is forged and that his threats are baseless." Robert's lawyer, a slick man with a sharp suit, stood and smirked. "Your Honor, we will present evidence from Mr. Robert's possession, including records left by the deceased husband, that prove Mrs. Margaret mismanaged her estate and concealed financial misconduct." His words made my stomach turn. Misconduct? That was not just an attack on my property, it was an attack on my integrity. The judge nodded. "We will hear the evidence." Robert's lawyer wasted no time. He picked up the black notebook and handed it to the clerk. My breath caught as it was passed to the judge. Pages flipped, the room silent except for the rustling of paper. My hands clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. Every word in that notebook had the power to destroy me. Finally, the judge looked up. "These records allege gambling debts, secret land sales, and hidden withdrawals. Mr. Robert, how did you come into possession of this notebook?" Robert leaned forward, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "My late brother entrusted it to me, Your Honor. He wanted me to protect his family from Margaret's irresponsibility. I've held on to it all these years, only to bring it forward now because Margaret is abusing her wealth and excluding her children." Gasps filled the courtroom. I wanted to scream, to shout, to tear his lies apart with my bare hands. But before I could speak, Mr. Daniels stood. His voice rang out clear, powerful. "Your Honor, The defense calls into question the authenticity of this so-called notebook. We have handwriting analysis that proves the majority of these entries were not written by the late husband, but by Robert himself. We also have copies of legitimate estate documents from county records, which directly contradict these claims. The judge's brow furrowed. Proceed. The next hour felt like a war. For every accusation Robert's lawyer hurled, Mr. Daniels countered with evidence. Elaine took the stand, her voice shaking at first, but growing stronger as she recounted the day she saw Robert forging papers. She held up her copies, showing how Robert had altered dates, signatures, even amounts. Experts confirmed it. The handwriting in the notebook was inconsistent, full of forgeries. Robert's smug grin began to crack, his jaw tightening with each piece of evidence laid against him. But then, just when I thought we were winning, Robert stood up himself, his voice booming. Your Honor, even if those pages were tampered with, there are real truths in here. My brother was not the man Margaret claims he was. He gambled. He lied. He distrusted her. And Margaret is lying to this court by pretending she built this mansion alone. Her children told me everything. She used money they were meant to inherit to build her empire. She stole from them. The words cut through the courtroom like thunder. My son dropped his head in his hands, ashamed, while my daughter broke into sobs at the back. Whispers filled the room, people shaking their heads, eyes darting toward me. The judge pounded his gavel for silence, but the damage had been done. Robert's voice had planted seeds of doubt. My chest tightened painfully. Was this how it would end? With the world believing I was a thief, a fraud, a liar? Mr. Daniels put a hand on my shoulder, whispering, "Stay strong. Don't falter." I nodded, swallowing my tears. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about truth. It was about standing against the years of cruelty and lies. I rose slowly, my legs shaking but my voice steady. Your Honor, I said, my voice echoing in a courtroom, I buried my husband with love, not with lies. I built my life from ashes while my children abandoned me with $30. If you want proof of my strength, look at this mansion. Look at the years of hard work I put in while Robert disappeared into the shadows. He can forge papers, he can spin lies, but he cannot erase the truth of what I endured. I am not guilty of theft. I am guilty only of surviving. The courtroom went silent. My words hung heavy in the air. Even the judge looked moved. But Robert's face twisted into rage. He slammed his fist against the table and shouted, "You're lying. You've always lied." His outburst startled everyone. The judge glared at him, warning him to sit down. And then, as the gavel struck again, the judge said words that made my breath hitch. This court will recess until tomorrow morning. At that time, I will deliver my ruling. The weight of those words sank into my bones.
Tomorrow.
One more night before I would know if my life's work would be saved or destroyed. Robert stormed out, his lawyer scrambling behind him. My son and daughter avoided my eyes, rushing out after him. Elaine squeezed my hand tightly, her eyes fierce. Mr. Daniels whispered, "We've done enough, but tomorrow will decide it all." As we walked out of the courtroom, my body trembling with exhaustion, I saw Robert standing outside by his car, his face twisted into a chilling smile. He leaned close as I passed and whispered, "Tomorrow, Margaret, you'll regret ever crossing me. You don't know what I still have up my sleeve." The night before the final court session was the longest of my life. I sat by the window of my mansion, staring out at the stars, unable to rest. The silence of the house was heavy, almost suffocating. My children had chosen not to call. They were with Robert, I was certain. My heart ached, not for the mansion, not for the money, but for the children I had once held in my arms, who now clung to the very man who had poisoned them against me. My Bible sat open on the table, and I prayed harder than I ever had. Lord, tomorrow let the truth be louder than the lies. Let justice speak. At dawn, Elaine walked into the room. Her face was pale but determined. "Margaret," she whispered, "I know you're afraid, but you're not alone this time. You have me." You have Daniel's. And you have the truth. Don't let Robert see your fear. I nodded, squeezing her hand. Her presence after so many years of silence was a strange comfort. Maybe the past could heal, even if my children's love never returned. When we arrived at the courthouse, the air was tense, thick with expectation. People filled the benches, some strangers, some neighbors, all whispering about the old widow, the mansion, and the fight that had captured the town's attention. Robert was already there, leaning casually against his table, the black notebook sitting in front of him like a crown jewel. His eyes locked onto mine as I entered, and he smirked. But this time, his smirk didn't shake me. This time, I knew he was desperate. The judge entered, and silence fell. This court is in session. Today we deliver a ruling. My breath caught. But before the judge could continue, Robert's lawyer stood abruptly. Your Honor, he said, before a ruling is made, my client wishes to present new evidence. Gasps filled the room. My chest tightened.
What now?
What else could Robert possibly have? Robert stood, holding up the black notebook. Your Honor, these pages prove my brother's mistrust of Margaret. But there's more. He flipped the book open dramatically. There are letters he wrote but never sent. Letters that reveal the truth about his doubts, his debts, and Margaret's inability to handle money. His voice grew louder, more theatrical, feeding off the whispers of the crowd. My knees threatened to give way. Letters? My husband's letters? The judge gestured. Proceed. Robert began to read, his voice dripping with triumph. December 5th. Margaret spends without thought. I fear she will squander everything. Perhaps I shouldn't trust Robert with more than I planned. My heart shattered. Tears stung my eyes. Was it true? Did my husband really write such words? The courtroom murmured, heads turning, eyes judging me. But then Mr. Daniels rose slowly, his face calm, his voice steady. Your Honor, we expected this trick. Last night, my office received confirmation from forensic analysts. These so-called letters were not written by the late husband. They were added later, forged with ink that is years newer than the original pages. We have sworn affidavits, and we are prepared to present them now. He handed a thick folder to the clerk. The judge examined it, his brow furrowing. Robert's face darkened. That's a lie. That's impossible, he shouted, his mask cracking. Mr. Daniels pressed forward, his voice strong. Not only that, Your Honor, but this notebook, this supposed weapon, is riddled with inconsistencies. Entire sections are copied from other estate documents and altered. This isn't evidence. It's a fabrication. And we have proof that Robert attempted to sell forged deeds years ago, a crime still unresolved. The judge's gavel struck for silence. Order in the court. His voice was sharp. He turned his gaze to Robert. These are serious accusations. Do you deny them? Robert's face twisted in rage. I deny everything. Margaret is the liar here. His voice cracked, desperation spilling out. My sons had dropped into his hands, shame flooding his face. My daughter sobbed uncontrollably, her voice barely audible. Uncle Robert, stop, please. The judge leaned forward, his voice low and final. This court has seen enough. The evidence of forgery is overwhelming. Robert, you are hereby charged with fraud, attempted theft, and obstruction. You will be remanded into custody pending trial. Gasps filled the room as officers moved toward Robert. He thrashed, his voice rising in a roar. This isn't over, Margaret. You think you've won, but you haven't. They'll turn on you again. You'll die alone. His words echoed as he was dragged from the courtroom, his face red with fury, his body fighting against the officers. Silence fell heavy. The judge turned his gaze to me. As for Mrs. Margaret, her ownership of the estate is upheld. The mansion, the land, and all related assets remain hers, free of Robert's interference. Relief washed over me like a flood. My knees buckled, and I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. Tears finally spilled from my eyes, not of fear, but of release. After 10 long years of pain, humiliation, and struggle, I had won. The courtroom erupted into murmurs. Elaine gripped my hand tightly, her face streaked with tears. Mr. Daniels allowed himself the faintest smile. But my children sat frozen. My son stared at the floor, unable to meet my eyes. My daughter whispered through her tears, "Mom, we're sorry. We didn't know. We didn't see." Her words cracked like glass. My heart ached, torn between love and the scars they had left. I stood slowly, my voice shaking but strong. "You had a choice once," I said softly to them, my tears flowing freely. "And you chose to throw me out with $30. I begged you, and you turned your backs. Today, I choose differently. I choose to stand, to survive, to protect what I built. I forgive you both, but forgiveness does not erase consequences. If you want a place in my life, you'll have to earn it, not by blood, but by truth." Their faces crumpled. My son whispered, "Mom, please." My daughter sobbed harder. But this time, I turned away. I walked out of that courtroom with Elaine and Mr. Daniels by my side, the weight of victory on my shoulders and the scars of betrayal still burning in my chest. As we stepped into the sunlight, the air felt different, lighter, freer. I had faced the darkest lies, the cruelest betrayals, and the heaviest burdens. And I had survived. My mansion still stood, but more importantly, so did I. This was the lesson I carried with me. Family is not just blood. Family is love, loyalty, and truth. And sometimes, the people who share your blood can wound you the deepest, but it is your strength, your faith, and your dignity that determine whether you rise again. And rise I did.
The end.
If this story touched your heart, reminded you of the power of truth, and showed you that no betrayal can destroy your dignity, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your story matters too, and one day, your voice could be the one that changes everything.